Chef Gail Sokol, and welcome to my kitchen. Today we're making cupcakes, yellow cupcakes. I like to call them cuppy cakes because when my kids were little, I made this yellow cake recipe for all the different shapes, and I used to make like double the amount or half the amount depending on what I made for their birthdays, and they got some really wild birthday cakes. We had a lot of fun. This particular cupcake is yummy, delicious, moist. It's got the yellow from the egg yolks. We're using the whole egg. It is scrumptious. You can frost it with anything you want. And if you look in a few next couple of weeks for videos, we're going to have some really special fillings and buttercreams for this particular cuppy cake, or use your own. But before we get started, I'd like you to click that notification button. I don't want you to miss any of my tips or videos, and I need you to become a subscriber because I love having you in my kitchen. I really, really do. I feel like you're my friends and we're baking together. It's a lot of fun. All right, cupcakes. So the first thing you want to do is preheat your oven, 350 degrees Fahrenheit. This is using the creaming method of mixing. And there are only about 4 methods of mixing for baking. And when you read a recipe, and if you followed me, you sort of can pick out what you're using. So we have softened butter. I have granulated sugar in my electric mixer. And when you cream them together with the paddle, that's known as the creaming method of mixing because you're adding air into the butter and lightening it and forming little air cells. And that's going to help the baking powder sort of increase those air cells and make our cuppy cakes rise. And that's the name of the game, right? Light, moist cupcakes. So the first thing we do is we got to get our mise en place together, and that's our dry ingredients. So today we're going to be using cake flour, less protein, more starch. So I'm using 2 1/4 cups of cake flour. If you don't have cake flour, just use all-purpose flour. Some people can even make their own cake flour by just adding a few tablespoons of cornstarch, taking out 2 tablespoons of regular all-purpose flour for every cup, and it will just give you a little bit of a lighter texture. But cake flour is super easy to find in the grocery store. All right, our leavening agent that's going to work just sort of like a team player with our butter and our air cells in our butter is baking powder, 1 tablespoon. 3 teaspoons, that's a lot, but that's what we need. And 1 teaspoon of salt. Some people like kosher salt. I like regular salt because it's a finer texture, and I like that. But for my breads, I use kosher salt, you know? Do what you like to do. And I whisk it together. It's very important that you homogeneously blend your chemical leavener, which is your baking powder, and your salt so that nobody gets a little surprise and takes a bite out of that cuppy cake and goes, uh-oh, it's a little salty. Or something else. You don't want to taste baking powder. It should be the invisible ingredient that just helps everything come together. All right, so once I have that, get rid of my whisk. I put my big spoon into my dry ingredients. I go to my mixer, and I have 1 1/2 cups of granulated sugar. Granulated sugar is sort of like sandpaper, and it's going to sort of push against our butter. I have 1 stick of butter that's been softened, unsalted butter. And we are going to cream on medium to medium high speed with our paddle. You don't want to use your whip because you're going to be adding too much air. And then you're going to end up with cupcakes that are a little bit too high, and then they may fall. So we're going to put this on medium to medium high. We're trying to get a light, fluffy texture. And sometimes all you get is a lighter texture, but we're going for changing the color from the butter from being yellow, because it's naturally yellow, and it goes more to a whitish color. When it becomes white, that's the sort of the clue that air cells have forced their way into the butter and lightened it, because the sugar is sort of mashing against the sides of the bowl and forcing air into that butter. That's a good thing. That's what we're looking for as bakers. Remember, we want to have that chemical leaven or baking powder working together to enlarge those air cells. So we're still going. Now in the meantime, I've measured out 1 cup of milk. I have used regular whole milk. You want to use coconut milk, if you want to use oat milk, you want to use lactate-free milk, whatever you want to use, or lactose-free milk, you do you. 1 cup. I have 2 large eggs that I've cracked. I always crack them in some form of a cup or a liquid measuring cup so that I can clear any shell out that may or may not have gotten in, but you don't want any crunchies. This is not a crunchy cupcake. And I added about 1½ teaspoons of pure vanilla extract because it tastes amazing. And now the creaming method of mixing has a specific set of instructions. All right, I sound like a school marm. So we have creamed, and now we're going to go on low speed. We're almost white, so we're going to go on low speed. We're going to add eggs 1 at a time. How do I know I've added 1 egg? 1 yolk will plop into the butter and sugar. There it goes. And with it will go the vanilla. All right? Once I get that mixed up, I'm going to add the remaining egg. But you want to make sure it's incorporated well before you add the next one. All part of the creaming method of mixing. What we're doing is we're creating sort of fundamental directions on how to get the moistest, smallest crumb, which will make it moist and light and delicious. We're ready for our next yolk. So we're adding the rest and the vanilla. All right. I have my rubber spatula nearby. Now, I told you I have this 1 cup of milk. Now I can just dump it in right now, but the creaming method of mixing, I'm going to show you what this looks like. All right, so let me just show you. You can see it's sort of light, right, and yellow. There's a little bit of yellow from the egg yolk. You see it? It's nice and fluffy. Almost looks like a frosting, but it doesn't have any structure in there yet. There's no flour. So the next basic direction of the creaming method of mixing is you take your dry ingredients and you add about 1/3 of them. So you alternate dry and wet ingredients. So you begin with the dry and end with the dry. So I'll show you. 1/3, approximately 1/3. You don't have to measure anything. Just go 1/3 by eye. About 1/3 of your dry ingredients in here. Just sort of put them in. If you ended up putting in half, there's no cake police that are going to come and get you, trust me. Trust me. It'll all come out. All right? I've made a lot of mistakes. Students have made a lot of mistakes, and they still make great cakes. All right, so now we have our dry ingredients. 1/3 of them are in. Now I turn it to low so I don't get smashed in the face with milk. And we're going to add 1/2 cup of the milk, so half the milk. Again, I just eyeballed it. All right, we're going to wait till that gets incorporated. If at any point some of the batter goes up on the sides, you want to push it down. All right, just so it gets fully incorporated. Now, at times, you may think your batter is separating and it looks sort of curdled and sort of, for lack of a better word, ugly. But it will actually come together once all the dry ingredients are in. Okay, so what do? We ended with our milk, so now we have another 1/3 of our dry ingredients. We put them in. Again, low speed, unless you want to clean up your kitchen floor with a lot of flour. I've done it, I don't like it. Keep going, we're almost there. And then, 1 more third left, right? I'm just gonna add a little bit, approximately 1/3's left. Again, eyeball it. And now I'm gonna add the rest of my milk. Slowly add your milk. And you can see that your batter is actually looking almost like a buttercream. It's gonna look smooth. It's not gonna look curdled anymore. Everything's coming together, okay? The feng shui is fabulous. And you'll see it's a gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous batter. That's why I used it for my kid's birthday cakes, because it was like always coming out. All right, now the piece de resistance, the last of our dry ingredients. Okay, just put them in. Put them in. Make sure they go in the bowl. All right. And I'm going to make about 24 cupcakes. Again, if you don't want cupcakes, you can make 2 8 or 9 inch layers. You just have to grease your bowl with nonstick cooking spray and line them with parchment paper. Now I'm going to go for like a second high and then off. Once I have a lot of flour in there, I don't want to develop gluten. Gluten is that matrix of protein that actually creates toughness and structure in a cake. We really want a nice light cake. So let me show you this gorgeous batter. Watch this. You're going to be really impressed. I love it. I look at batter. It's my thing, you know. It's like, that's my jam. Look how gorgeous that is. Isn't that pretty? Very pretty. Now, there may be a few smackaroles of flour left on the side. I know it. I see it. You're saying, Chef Gail, it's on the side. I see it. I see it. And you know what? It's just because of the way the electric mixer is made. There's a little indentation, you know, like a little hump inside because of the motor. So every time I see the sides, I'm going to go around with a rubber spatula, and I'm just going to bring all that beautifulness together. All right? And now I have a gorgeous batter. Looks a little like buttercream, right? And now I'm ready to put it into my pan. So I've lined 24, 2 dozen pans, standard muffin pans with liners. If you don't want to use liners, you don't have to. It's just nice when they're cupcakes and you want to put a really pretty icing on top to have that. And we want to fill them about halfway. If these were muffins, I'd go higher. But I'm going to go about halfway in. All right. And I'm going to grab my spoon to help me out here. All right. That's about it. I'm not going to do any more. It's a little bit more than half. All right. Again, there's no cupcake police coming after you. Don't worry. We don't want them to overflow, so you're really trying to keep them in the cupcake liner. We do not want them to peek out over. We want them to rise enough that we can put an icing on top of them and that they'll come out really, really well. And make sure your liners are sort of straight in. They don't bend, because then you're going to have a bend in your cupcake. See what just happened? So we're going to straighten you out, guy. There you are. All right. And just sort of push it so it will straighten out. Sometimes the liners do that. They don't cooperate. But these are doing very well. So I'm going to continue filling my beautiful cupcake pans. And these bake about maybe 20 to 25 minutes until a small sharp knife comes out clean after you put it into the center of one of your cupcakes. Bake it in the center of the oven, all right? And I'll see you back. The yellow cupcakes have come out of the oven and they're beautiful, all 24 of them. So I'm going to let them cool completely before I decide what I'm going to do with them. And you will see in a few upcoming videos some surprises that I have, and I think you're going to like them. So I hope you make these cupcakes, these yellow cupcakes, very standard recipe, easy for anything. It's almost like, you know, that little black dress that you have? You can dress it up any way you want. These are they. I hope you enjoy. I hope you become a subscriber. Till next time.